So I have something to say. Now I'm glad that I have the opportunity to say it. I'm glad that you're giving me an ear to say it to you. I'll start by saying this. I'm worried about you. I've known you for a long time. I've known you through the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs. And I have to say that throughout that time, there have been worries and there have been proud moments, perhaps. But now, upon the eve of great change, I worry about you. For I know that this change, bound to happen at some point, no doubt, has a few different possibilities, a few different paths that can be walked. And I understand that there are responsibilities that you have yet to accept. The acceptance of which, under the right circumstances, can lead you on the path to true success. True peace of mind. And I've seen you grow through the years. Grow into what many would consider a successful career. But what I can see is what some may call success. But what I see as a slow poison. Now without this, I think that poison would still be there. There is something about the path that has been walked, some element, some foundational piece, that must be changed, that must be given up, must be sacrificed for this transformation to take the type of effect that we would like it to. And we don't get many of these chances in life when all of the stars seemingly align. Now, of course, we can change anytime we like. But when the world around us seems to point in the direction of and give you the option to, it saves you a lot of thought. But perhaps not. Perhaps there's always thought involved in these things. It saves you a lot of time. And so I want to invite you on a journey. Forget about what you've heard about the way and the path, because that's just what it is. It's a way and a path. Let's not get too caught up in these matters. Well, let's begin. Proverbs chapter 3. My son, forget not my law, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to you. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them about your neck. Write them upon the tablet of your heart. So shall you find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to your navel, and marrow to your bones. Honor the Lord with your substance, and with first fruits, all of your increase. So shall your barns be filled with plenty, and your presses shall burst out with new wine. My son, despise not the chastising of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as far as the son in whom he delighteth. Happy is the man that finds wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things you canst desire, and not to be compared unto her. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are always pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. The Lord by wisdom has founded the earth, by understanding he has established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from your eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall they be life to your soul, and grace to your neck. Then shall you walk in your way safely, and your foot shall not stumble. Ye shall lie down, and your sleep shall be sweet. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it comes. For the Lord shall be your confidence, and shall keep your foot from being taken. Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of your hand to do it. Say not unto thy neighbor, Go, and come again, and tomorrow I will give, when thou hast it by thee. Devise not evil against your neighbor, seeing he dwelleth securely by thee. Strive not with a man without cause, if he has done you no harm. Envy you not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. For the froward is abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blesseth the habitation of the just. Surely he scorneth the scorners, but he giveth grace unto the lowly. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be promotion of fools. So we begin in a familiar manner. The old fatherly advice. There are certain principles that you must live by, and in so doing, the length of your days, the length of your life, and peace shall be added to your experience here. He says, "Let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the tablet of your heart." So let's talk about this mercy and truth, and what exactly it would mean for it to forsake one. And what is this symbol of binding them around the neck? Certainly writing them upon the tablet of your heart is something that is more intuitive to many of us. But what of this mercy and truth? What can we say that mercy is? Perhaps we can say mercy is forgiveness. Mercy is forgiveness in the face of honest reconciliation. So in what way can mercy forsake us? Perhaps if we are forgiven for something that we ought not to be forgiven for. For if we are forgiven for something that we ought not to be forgiven for, then we will not learn and correct our behavior to do what is right. And in such a circumstance, truth would then also forsake us, because we have been led to believe that the charity that we receive is honest and true, when in fact it is not. We see a lot of it these days in our culture. But at the same time, it seems that we have another side of the coin in which there is just not enough mercy, properly placed forgiveness. There are many that are condemned, but are propped up by those who wish to love them. But their love, again, is something that deceives and corrupts and furthers their condemnation. And there are many that are quick to condemn that should otherwise show forgiveness, or for their part play the role in that which guides, so that they can truly show mercy to those that deserve it. And through that guidance and that path of walking towards truth, then mercy can be shown. And what can I say about the neck? The neck is a transition, it would seem, between the head and that of the body. Now surely there's a risk of over-symbolization here, but I'm going to risk it nonetheless, because it is an interesting thing that many of us wear things around our neck. Surely one possible answer is that we do it out of convenience. That's just a nice place to hang something. But I think a more deliberate and thoughtful response is appropriate. And so, as I was saying, the transition point between the head and the body. The head, which includes our face and all the intricate musculature that allows us to express our emotions which come from deep within the mind. Emotions that can be integrated with the will of our being, and they can express quite lofty things without even saying a word. And all this is to say that we have this engine, this conscious mind, that has been gifted. It has the ability to see, to intuit, to make sense of. It is a mirror through which we can see the divine mind, let's say, the unified mind. And the body is the thing that carries the mind. It allows it to exist in this world. It allows it to participate. Albeit, at times, it seems to be a dreadful thing. Almost as if it is in the Platonic sense, a prison. Or at least that's one way it could be thought of anyway. The body cannot do the things of the mind. It can be directed by the mind. So when we place about our neck mercy and truth, we are saying that as our conscious experience integrates itself into the world and is embodied, it must pass through truth and mercy in order for it to, again, be embodied and exist in this world. And again, write them upon the tablet of your heart. It's a similar symbol, I think. For in the moment, and before you experience an emotion, your emotions again must pass through this filter of truth and of mercy. So shall you find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Verse 5. Trust in the Lord and all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. Interesting distinction between your own understanding and that of God's understanding, which leads us to believe that these are two different things. At least they can be two different things if our understanding is not God's understanding. It also implies that there is a way to understand, that there is something that is knowable, that we should keep it. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. So acknowledge that there is a way, acknowledge that there is a path, acknowledge that there is an understanding that is outside of your own, that knows what is good for you. Or perhaps I should say, a way of understanding that potentially you do not know, and you cannot know, for it is it's beyond you, it's a level beyond you. Perhaps not that it directs you per se, but that if you choose it, if you choose to follow it, and you believe that there is a way, then by your efforts, he shall direct your paths. Be not wise in your own eye. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. I hear exercise humility. You don't have all the answers. Fear the Lord, be aware of consequences. Be not wise in your own eyes. Of course, this means that we see it from our own perspective, that we are, that we have good judgment, we have knowledge, and we have the experience necessary to consider ourselves wise. And I think that the warning here is necessary because if we are to see ourselves as wise, we are essentially praising ourselves. We are lifting ourselves up. And this self-praise is, I want to say arbitrary. Another word is subjective. I don't much like that word, but there is no standard by which we can compare it to. We can compare it to those who are around us, perhaps, but even there, and even then, if we don't understand the subtlety of the human experience, I think we are likely to misplace our judgment, and therefore a misplaced judgment is antagonistic to that of wisdom. And so if it is indeed the case that to praise oneself and to be excessively proud in the absence of serving that which is beyond oneself leads to this hollowing out of what is truly good judgment. It leads one into ignorance. It shall be health to your navel and marrow to your bones. In other words, it is something that is crucial, it is vital to your growth and your development. As when we are young and unable to look after ourselves through our navel, is how we get nutrients. Likewise in the marrow, in the marrow of the bones, we find the process of red blood cell formation. It contains hematopoietic stem cells. These are cells that have the ability to differentiate into different types of blood cells, including red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. But the overall picture is that this is a symbol of nourishment and of replenishment, of sustainment. Honor the Lord with your substance and with the first fruits of all your increase. Of the things that are tangible, of the things that you have done rightly. Well, sure, I'll say rightly, but there is a caveat here, and that one's fruits may be perceived as a fruit if we are to gain some monetary benefit. We would consider this a fruit of our labor. But also, if we don't consider the the form of our labor. And if this form of labor is not the type of productive behavior that leads to fulfillment and of righteous behavior, let's say, then whatever material gain that there may be is inconsequential. It's insignificant. And so that also means that whatever material that we are after in life is not the only thing. It's not the only standard by which we measure a successful life, nor is it the standard by which we measure our fruits. Now, it's part of the equation, no doubt, but it is not the only way. And so honor the Lord with what you have, that what you have done in service to produce something that is tangible and has produced something that has benefited you in such a way that has allowed a certain degree of grace and growth to occur. The upward momentum of human progress that is towards something, that is truly towards something. So shall your barns be filled with plenty, and your presses shall burst with new wine. My son, despise not the chastising of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth he correcteth, even as Father the Son in whom he delighteth. So obviously this is something that we have discussed about the judgment, the correction, the discipline, the consequences of one's actions. This is done not out of malice, but of love. And that, just like in the example of Plato's cave, when we have found ourselves in a situation chained in an environment that is at a particular level of seeing the world and reality. It is a low resolution depiction of our reality. And it's not until we free ourselves of those shackles and venture up through the cave passage to the top that we are able to gaze upon a finer reality, something of an enlightened view of things. Now, I mention that because part of this ascension, I think, is dealing with things that one had otherwise perhaps taken for granted. It is the things for which the eyes have difficulty seeing. It is the truth that we would otherwise hide due to fear of pain and discomfort. And this type of judgment that we are talking about uncovers that truth and says, no, this is actually important for you to face. Certainly it's going to be difficult, but you have to face it in order to progress, in order to grow. And I think it's important, again, at this moment to stop and say, although many of these matters may be general in their scope, and although that many of us may hunger for specific examples and concrete declarations, and there are many of those in the Bible, but in terms of the Proverbs here, these are prompts. These are prompts for one to reflect on one's own life. When we come to the understanding that there are difficult things in life which cause us to cover the truth, But in the Bible it says, "My son, despise not the chastising of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction." It means we should listen. We should not live our life under the false flag of nominalism. We should truly try to integrate meaningful things into our experience. And there are many things as I sit here and I reflect, I understand that, although difficult, if one is to actually pay attention deliberately to the things that we do day in and day out, there are many things that I can find that I know should be corrected. But it's difficult. And just to give one example here of what I think needs to be changed is my general attention. I think I'm too quick to fall into something and to do a behavior that is simple and easy, that really doesn't benefit me. But I'll give myself an excuse. I'll open up my iPad and I'll open up a podcast. And it's not, I try my best to understand that I need to learn things about the world, and so I'll find something that has substance. But where I run into trouble is the attentiveness, the degree to which I pay attention and retain the information that I'm hearing. Because I could throw on my headphones and sit and do nothing and listen, but retain nothing. I might as well spend that time meditating, clearing my mind of all of the clutter, so that I may, when the time comes and requires of me to pay attention, I'm ready to do so, rather than put on the white noise to distract me from my own thought, and the thought that comes to me from seemingly from without. Happy is the man that finds wisdom, and the man that gets understanding, or getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the grain thereof than fine gold. So here we have a distinction of value. It's not saying that gold and silver are not valuable. What it is saying is that wisdom and understanding are at a level higher in terms of value than of the material things, that of the silver and of the gold. Certainly the understanding person and the wise person would understand how to get gold and silver. But the truly wise person would understand what the utility of that gold and silver is. They would understand what to use it for, under what circumstances it is required of him to sacrifice in order to obtain it, for what end. Now, again here we see that this idea of wisdom and understanding is referred to in the female. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things that you can desire are not to be compared to her. So I know we've completed this exercise on the last episode, but I think it's prudent to continue to do so, to flesh out this archetype that is the feminine, because truly it is an important point here. So what does it mean for wisdom and understanding to take on the characteristics of the feminine archetype? What does it mean to refer to these as female? Moreover, from that, we see another distinction. When we give it these qualities, we say that these qualities, many of which are encapsulated within the feminine, are more precious than your shiny and sparkly, materially valuable things like rubies. Now, all these other things that you can desire, that are like rubies or whatever, are not to be compared to her. So what qualities and characteristics does she have? Of course, we understand that this is referring to knowledge and wisdom, but this is similar to the thread that is consistent throughout this chapter so far, is that of growth and of nurturing. You remember the analogy to the navel, the bone marrow, of judgment, correction by God. And the feminine surely includes this quality, that of the nurturing, that of the empathic and compassionate. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. So what might we consider this to mean? Length of days is in her right hand. So obviously now the two hands are symbols in and of themselves, the right and the left. Now in the Psalms and throughout the Bible so far, the right hand is that something of strength and of power. But this is often referred to as the right hand of God. Generally, this right hand of God is strength. It can provide blessings and favor, protection and salvation, resurrection and judgment, covenant and oath, all of these sorts of things. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it applies the same here, though it is possible. It says length of days is in her right hand. So what does it mean when we say length of days? Well, this is a standard, a way of seeing how to measure the length of a day. Now, of course, what it is not referring to is our standard measurements of what a day is, this 24 hours. Length of days, I think, refers to a few different things. It refers to the extension of life, the totality of life. How many days do you have in the life that you are given? But also, there must be a richer meaning beneath, because it's not just the length of days. There are plenty of people that live difficult and unfulfilled lives, that live until, what would we say, sort of the physiological maximum, or they meet and fulfill the physiological average, let's say. So that in that sense, the length of their days are quite long. Now, there is an argument to be had that if an individual is not living for love, they're not living outside of themselves, they're not sacrificing rightly, then it certainly is possible that the stresses and the anxieties that they feel by pursuing inferior goods year after year after year has an effect on their physical health, and that can shorten their physical lives, the span of their life. I certainly take that to be true. But the length of days, I think this also refers to the quality of the day itself. and of the days together. That is the way in which we spend our days, the thoughts and the company in which we occupy ourselves. Again, the common thread of this chapter is growth and nurturing. And the length of days, just as in the process of coming to wisdom and understanding, is a path that one walks. And so this is just as can be seen of the length of days in the more physical sense as it can be in the quality of these days. And that the length therein, when we talk about quality, is longer and more meaningful, the more intentional and the more attentive and the more committed we are to the path of righteousness and wisdom and understanding. So this she holds in her right hand, and in her left hand, which is the opposite hand, she holds riches and honor. And so, if I'm going to boil this down even further, I would say the right hand is meaning and purpose. This is again, it does retain some of the original elements of the right hand of God. That is this driving force, this force that can provide. It's the active element. The left hand is more of the passive element. It is the one that receives. It receives riches. It receives honor. But we don't get it without the driving force of the right hand. How can it be that if we fail to achieve a degree of purposefulness, committedness, and understanding, that we would ever receive honor and riches? Now, there are plenty of people that pursue lesser pursuits, and they achieve quite a deal of riches and honors. But again, here it is not so much about the superficial distinction and description of riches and honor. We're talking about the truth of the matter. We're talking about sobriety of mind. And true riches and true honors are hard to deceive when one is liberated from the orgasmic sensation that material comforts can offer us. A nice car, a nice house. All of these things, they should, and they do, pale in comparison when one is oriented rightly towards the love of family, towards the growth of spirit, and to the hardening and solidification of one's character. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. So again, we have a further distinction about the way to wisdom, the path to wisdom. It is explicit here. Her ways are pleasantness, and her paths are peace. They are without this profound disagreement. When I think of peace, I think of war. I think of what war is. It's a profound disagreement. It's a agreement that carries us to such a depth of suffering and anguish that many of us perish because of it. Now, war can happen within the soul just as it can happen out in the world, out in the battlefield. It's a matter of scale and a matter of level. But in my opinion, all the same in its structure, in its form. And when it occurs within the heart and within the soul of a man, I think that it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult struggle. It's a difficult conflict. Certainly it can end in death. But it can also end in victory. But it's not without a cost. But peace, on the other hand, is the reconciliation and the resolution of our conflicts without this destruction, without the scars. No doubt there is growth to be had from overcoming major obstacles. But it's a matter of what we are sacrificing to, and what exactly we are sacrificing. If we are sacrificing and we are damaging the elements of ourselves that allow us to perceive what is good, then certainly this type of behavior is not what we should be engaging in. If war is to corrupt us physically and psychologically, then that makes it hard for us to recover from, and it scars us over in such a way that's similar to the body as it scars over. The tissue is not as robust. It's not as sensate. It is not as pleasing to the eye to see. And this is permanent, these scars. And it is from a path of violence that we get them. And in the psychological sense, I think that this is true. It remains true. And so the ways of pleasantness and the ways of peace are not without conflict. But they are without the ugliness of evil. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that remaineth or that retaineth her. A tree of life. The tree is a great symbol. Of course, we have the tree that is in Genesis. The tree of life, it's a symbol of abundance. Again, nourishment and growth. The tree is something that draws the sustenance from the earth, and it uses that to grow its branches, just as man does the same. He draws from the earth to sustain himself and to sustain his offspring, so that we may grow and expand. It can symbolize redemption and restoration. It can symbolize unity and connection. And so the Lord by wisdom has founded the earth, by understanding as he established the heavens. This is another statement that we see in Genesis. I'm sure we see it in the Psalms as well. The Lord by wisdom has founded the earth. So by good judgment he has founded the earth. By a degree of reason, by a profound experience in knowing, and by understanding he has established the heavens. And it is a difficult thing to get a handle on. This wisdom founding the earth, a material thing, a structural thing, bound by natural law. A thing of principle and of structure, of reliability. And to found such a thing requires an encompassing of profound knowledge in a discerning manner. It involves sound judgment, again, good discernment. It involves what is right. And by understanding, he has established the heavens. Understanding is the comprehension, it is the grasp of what is. It is the grasp of the earth. It provides meaning, significance to something. The implication of these principles it involves the web of connecting things together. It is the insight and the clarity that is gained by doing so. By his knowledge, the depths are broken. The depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. So there are a lot of symbols here. By his knowledge, so through this way of his, the depths are broken. So what can we say of these depths? What is the image? What is the language that we can use to describe them? And why would it be worth knowledge to break up these depths? What does it mean for the clouds to drop down the dew? Again, this verse is very heavy. It's pregnant with symbolism, so it's going to take a while. But to begin with, by his knowledge, the depths are broken up. We're focusing on the depths. What images in our experience can we find that are these depths? And whatever path that we use, how can we connect this to another path? So the first depth that I'm thinking about is the depth of the sea. I'm thinking about a depth that is seemingly imperceptible. Seemingly imperceptible. However, that's just the thing about these depths. When we peer down into the sea, into the deep waters, perhaps we are under the sea and we look down off of a trench. I think part of the symbolism of the depth, the same could be said of the universe or out in outer space. But there's some point at which we can't see any further. And I think that uncertainty Now there's a certain mind of the modern day that understands something about the depths of the ocean, that of course it doesn't continue forever. But if we are to pull the pattern out and say, well, what about this anxiety that comes from the depths that are perceived to continue forever? Well, by his knowledge, the depths are broken up. And what does it mean for them to be broken up? Perhaps they are for something that is deep and not readily traversable. For it to be broken up is to be broken up into pieces. And it's not everything at once that is unknown, let's say. Now, instead of the unknown being unmanageable, now the unknown is, in some sense, known, because the unknown has been permeated by this knowledge. And the clouds drop down the dew. Now you have to wonder about translation here, and you have to hope and you have to pray that you are following their through line. Because if we catch an interpretation that they did not mean, it's not going to land the way that they wanted it to land. And so when I see the clouds drop down the dew, I wonder, are they using a physical analogy? Or are they taking more fundamental elements of our physical experience and placing them further down into the symbolic structure? And that is to say that the whole thing, first and foremost, is a symbol, is a symbol for something. The clouds drop down the dew. It has to come back to us in some way that is in some way understandable or meaningful. Otherwise, why write it at all? And so these clouds that drop down the dew, the first thing that I would say from the contrarian standpoint is the dew is not something that is necessarily dropped down from the clouds. But then again, what are clouds? They are equivalent to dew. They are masses, visible masses of condensed water vapor at a level that's high enough for it to actually condense. It's cold enough up there. And the same phenomenon happens on the earth. So while perhaps the dew isn't falling away from the clouds, in some sense that's not the way to think about it, because the clouds are formed of the same process. Perhaps there's a intermediate period, where the process does not take place. But when dew forms, moisture in the air condenses onto cooler surfaces. And this is most evident, obviously, during the morning or late night hours. Now, obviously, the process is different, but I'm talking about sort of the properties of water and the effects of atmosphere and temperature on water and water vapor is consistent. That's the point that I'm drawing here. Now, the more subtle processes are, of course, different. They have to be by where they are. But this explanation, I don't think necessarily is the approach that we should take here. So we just came off of understanding that we have seen intelligibility brought into the world, that which is seemingly infinite and beyond us. Well, perhaps not. That's not the best way to put it. that which seems to be, the depths seem to be infinite, that are beyond intelligibility itself, are in fact intelligible by the knowledge of God. Now, we will eventually get to a substantial discussion about God, but it may not be for a long time. It may not be for certainly not this episode, certainly not this series, certainly not in the next few series. It's going to take years to get to that conversation, to penetrate this substrate so deeply that we can discuss such things. But we are in the Old Testament, and so this is where we will interpret. Now, along the way, of course, we will begin the conversation. We will drop little hints here and there about God and His nature, what His presence is, what the action of that, what that means for us as conscious beings. And the clouds drop down the dew. So I think that the interpretation is an extension of, or I should say the interpretation of this, the dew situation that we are in, it's an extension of the previous symbol. So there's intelligibility that is brought into the depths, the seemingly unknowable, and it shatters that. It comes into our experience. It continues as knowledge. Or maybe I shouldn't say quite our experience yet, but it's something that it is more readily perceivable by us. It's not as abstract, as for now we're talking about a symbol to a natural phenomenon. That the dew is moisture. It is a nutrient. It nourishes the earth. And so although the earth is just this material thing, it is imbued with this intelligibility, this knowledge that permeates through it. And the process by which the natural things occur are due to that intelligibility, due to that order. They follow a law. We call it these days the natural law. My son, let not them depart from your eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. Now what interests me here is the addition of them. Let not them depart from your eyes. Who are they that we are talking about? We haven't been talking about a group of people, have we? I mean, we've discussed the wicked. That's not what we're talking about here. It wouldn't make sense for the Word of God to say, don't let the wicked depart from you, from your eyes. I mean, in a sense, you wouldn't let them depart from your eyes because you always want to know where they are, but I don't think that's quite it. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. And so this is sort of, I think, this is what it is referring to. It is the keeping of the wisdom and the discretion. It is the keeping of her, whatever that may look like. It is the wisdom and discretion that has been described in the bringing of intelligibility to the seemingly limitless expanse of our existence, of our conscious experience, more likely. And so what I find interesting here, although we've solved the them problem, the them problem is still interesting insofar as wisdom and discretion having their ways of showing. And this comes in with the other part of the symbol. Let them not depart from your eyes. And so I think that we must always keep an eye open for what that means. Or rather, I should say, for when and how wisdom and discretion can find us. Because after all, we are looking out. I think we would fancy ourselves to be the conquerors of much, but we are always constantly looking out. There's not a single one of us that knows everything. And we are all constantly receiving. We are making models of the world. And in our models, there are the finer things that come to greet us and to grace us. And when they come, when they materialize, and where we might see them in their sort of, again, this sort of dew that gathers over the surface, when we find ourselves in a circumstance in which we can recognize the possibility of this happening, that there is a cool night where we are sure that the dew will come, we should place ourselves in that environment because we are ready to receive that understanding, that intelligibility. So shall they be life unto your soul and grace to your neck. Yeah. Yep. Then shall you walk in your way safely, and your foot shall not stumble. It's within your knowing. You walk on solid ground. When you liest down, you shall not be afraid. You shall lie down, and your sleep shall be sweet. So, an analogy here to this peaceful life, a mind at ease. It's not difficult to fall asleep. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it comes. Now, sudden fear obviously is frightening. It's destabilizing. I think it could be a profound test. Fear. And when it tests you, I think especially in the modern context, with all the conveniences, it is very convenient to run to something that will anesthetize us, that will dull the sensation of fear or of pain. And one should fear, perhaps, the desolation of the wicked if they are concerned that they themselves are the wicked. But we would not be afraid if we kept wisdom and discretion within our sight, because we would have done right by the law. For the Lord shall be your confidence, and shall keep your foot from being taken. Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of your hand to do it. So what would it mean to withhold good from someone? This is difficult, I think, due to the possibility of many different examples, right? But let's just pick one, and now my fear, my anxiety. This is the lack of belief, perhaps, because I want to pick something that is sufficient to get us to where we need to go. And if I pick an analogy that's too superficial, I worry that I won't be able to break through to what needs to be broken through to. But to keep this advice in mind, I don't think we should worry about that. I think we should just pick whatever old example and see what happens. What happens if I withhold a good from someone? What happens if first we would have to characterize what the good is and what withholding would look like. I think of withholding as probably the easier place to start. Withholding would be to keep from somebody. It's to have the thing that can be offered, but to hold it instead of to give it. So we are with it. We are with that object of that good, and we continue to hold it. We are withholding it. Now the good is different. It's a little bit more difficult. Now there are a million different things that we can talk about here. There are countless minutes that we could spend on it. But we need something sufficiently general where we can grasp onto it without getting too far gone into its purity. And that analogy just sort of reminds me of all the different types of poles that we have in our society, but the archetypes are certainly very important things to understand, because if we get confused and we stray too far away from the poles, this can lead to very negative consequences. We might not be able to find our way home, and this is like a dark age that occurs. But the archetype formation is not going to be our responsibility here. That is well above my IQ level. Or rather, I should say, in order to be graceful with myself and to give myself some peace, I should say that it is in our future to discuss. If we get to it, then we get to it. If not, we don't. But it's not because we didn't try. So again, this withholding of the good. So in order for it to be a problem, the withholding of the good needs to be, or I should say the withholding of the good from them to whom it is due, right, important characterization there, when it is in the power of your hand to do so. So we're talking about one that deserves it. We're not talking about all the critical aspects, so we can go down here. Well, what does it mean to actually deserve something? We have to forget about that for a moment. We can get lost in the complexity. We just have to agree that there is such a way to be deserving of something. And that in this situation, this person is coming to me, and they are deserving of what I have to give them. Now, I can say that I am a poor person, and yet I can also say that I have the power to do so. In what situation would that happen? Well, it would happen in a reciprocal relationship. It would happen where my monetary value didn't matter. It would happen in a situation where my value and my worth is for fundamental reasons. That I am loved, and the person that I am communicating with is loved. Now, this is not the only situation. I can imagine any number of more superficial examples, but I think that this one, again, not to go back on what I was saying, but this is the one that is emerging, and I think I'm satisfied with it so far. So we have an interaction here between two people that love one another. Let's say they're friends. Let's forget about the romantic relationship. Let's say we are friends. To withhold good, in this case, is very intimate, because it is to withhold love. I am in the power by virtue of our reciprocal relationship and our commitment to one another as friends. I hold the power to provide you with love and for you to accept it and to take it. I think that's one of the finer things about a friendship, is this opening of the individual that allows love to enter in, and the longing for the surrendering, maybe not surrendering, but the giving of love to somebody else that they are confident will receive it. In this situation, where I have such a relationship and such a responsibility, to withhold it would be, in a sense, a betrayal, because I am not living up to my responsibility, my commitment to that relationship, to our relationship. And that has its consequences. It can lead to, let's assume the relationship is a strong one. I think it could lead to darkness. It could lead to the dissolution of the relationship, the bonds that hold that relationship together, certainly. Any true bond, any true relationship is bound up with love. If it is something that is withheld, it'd be very difficult to maintain it. But there are forms of love out there that extend beyond that. But that is more common, and even more. It's less common, but it is common to those situations that are even more intimate, like the parent and child relationship. But to speak for a moment further, not just the dissolution or destruction of the relationship, dissolution, I should say. It's not just that negative aspect of the relationship as a whole in that way. There are more levels that this can permeate. It can permeate the heart, and it can cause the individual a lot of pain. Because a bad thing has been done. A good has been tarnished. Or the potential for a good has not taken place. Say not to your neighbor, go and come again, and tomorrow I will give, when you have it by you, when you hast it by you. Do not delay your offering. Do not delay this good. Devise not evil against your neighbor, seeing that he dwells securely by you. So I hear a little bit of, don't be jealous of your neighbor's belongings here. Do not, I think this is the primary interpretation, do not, when he, in his secure dwelling, when he lets his guard down, because he is at home, and his home happens to be near you, that you take advantage of that, and do something to him when his guard is down. Strive not with man without a cause, if he has done you no harm. So there needs to be a reason for your combat. If somebody else has done you no harm, then what reason do you have to harm somebody else? And it's an interesting thing. What reason do we have? And I would caution to give a poor reason, because I think often a poor reason may be worse than no reason at all. Perhaps that's not true, but I can imagine a situation in which we, instead of not having a reason, we have a poor reason, and this poor reason leads us to do evil with a person that has not done us any harm. Sort of a corruption of the mind that one is just, that sees through and sees the moral landscape in this sort of distorted lens, through this distorted lens. And it's not necessarily an intentional thing, which can also be another possibility. But there always has to be, again, this discretion. We always have to go back to this discretion. We have to see the whole of it. And we have to make, just like God had spread his knowledge into the depths and broke it apart, we have to spread our knowledge into these unknown situations, break them apart, and think about them. Now, there are areas that I go here often that I'm not going to go into, with the potential pitfalls of reductionism and this sort of thing. But it doesn't need to be just reductionism. That's more of a go-to for, I think, the age that we live in. Envy you not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. For the froward is abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. Again, the froward is the contrary. It is the difficult to deal with. In some words, I'm sure we can expand this into, if contrary is on the other side of or against, we can say that this is against the good, and thereby saying this is against truth. So for the person that is against truth is an abomination to the Lord. And this comes after we talk about envy you not the oppressor. And that would imply that the froward, that which is against truth, is the oppressor. That which against truth is the oppressor. Now that bell should ring quite clearly in the ears of those that are paying attention to the day that we find ourselves in. But his secret is with the righteous. So those that choose rightly, they are on the side of the moral authority. And I should, again, give that a further clarification. There are those that can appear to be on the side of moral authority when they really are not, which implies an objective moral authority. And there are those that actually are in line with that objective moral authority. And I'm referring to the latter. So when they are on the side, they receive the secret. Now this in of itself is prime territory for a mythic. Because we could do a lot about the word secret, just as we can do a lot with the word depth. it would take the knowledge of the Lord to permeate that secret, to make it intelligible, just like that other verse. That was verse 20. But in this sense here, we don't have that. We don't have that construct. We just have somewhat of an empty nest, and I guess it's good territory to explore, but I think we need to continue on the path, and that's one of those verses that you come back to after you've seen a little bit more and experienced a little bit more. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blesses the habitation of the just. Surely he scorns the scorners, but he gives grace unto the lowly. So the scorn, this is the belief that something is worthless. This disdain, contempt. This is something that I am guilty of. As soon as I read it, I felt the gavel come down, and I have been sentenced for it. It's difficult for me to be completely, I don't want to say cheerful because that's not quite right, but it's easy to have disdain. It's easy to take the comforting road and to be that way, and to have difficulty to find, even if things aren't perfect, it's, I think, often an excuse for us not to find beauty in the world, and that, I think, can cause that sense of worthlessness and disdain, which is antagonistic to our pursuits here. He giveth grace to the lowly. Now, why would it be grace, and why would it be to the lowly? Now, the lowly. There are many different things I think we can say about the lowly. It's a position on the hierarchy, the lowly. It's low relative to something else, something that is higher. But this lowly, I think, refers to a potential for two different circumstances. A perpetual condition by which there is no change, and then a condition by which there is change, that there is the possibility of redemption and movement. Now, I think that the former, that of the fixed, is, I think, due to some unfortunate realities of nature. I think as there is a scale with IQ, and there's a scale in ability, there's a scale in probability and likelihood that somebody will find an unfortunate disease, whether it be later in life or whether it be congenital. I think there are these unfortunate realities that create these pretty solid, lowly conditions. But I don't want to mistake I don't want to make the mistake of the degree of lowliness to that of the impossibility of change. I don't want to make that an equivalency there, that there's some. Now, there may be some absolute. I mean, there are people that are born that are just not going to have a chance in this society. But due to grace, they will. Their parents will still care for them after they're born. The person that had a difficult childhood may get a second chance. We, the average, may make a mistake. And yet, if we continue our striving for good, we may receive this grace. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. You have to be committed, but it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, making mistakes is how you learn. And all the way up. All the way up to the largest house with the nicest of things and the most beautiful of smelling corridors and the most enlightened mind. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. So the wise they will have discretion. They will have distinction. They will have this honor. They will have this majesty about them. They've inherited it because of certain action. But shame shall be the promotion of fools. This shame, this humiliation, distress, the awareness of a wrongdoing or foolish behavior, this embarrassment, there are multiple things I think could be said here, but I think I'll let that last statement stand as it is. But shame shall be the promotion of fools. And so I think we're going to end this episode here. We will continue next time with chapter 4. And also another interesting thing to note, unlike if anybody's ever listened to the Psalms, if I return to this, well, perhaps this is, oh yes, there are titles in the Psalms, but you really don't see titles in the Proverbs. But also in a different version, a different translation, there are different titles, so I probably shouldn't make too much a big deal about it, but nonetheless, the titles were sometimes interesting. They give you a good insight and warm up into what the poem or the song is going to be. But in any case, this is where we're going to finish. I will see you next time.